What's going on, everyone? This is Kevin here. Now, I've had the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 7 for 2 months now. I've got a lot of opinions, and I'm looking forward to sharing all of that with you here in this video. So let's get started. This video is sponsored by ToneGate. Meet the ToneGate 360-degree spin magnetic stand case for the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 7. This case is designed for protection, versatility, and next-level convenience. This case gives your Z Flip 7 full body coverage with reinforced corners, hinge protection, and even a built-in privacy screen protector to keep your display safe from scratches and prying eyes. And here's where it gets especially exciting. On the back of the case, you get a 360-degree rotating magnetic ring stand. It spins smoothly into any angle, portrait, landscape, or tilted, and it's perfect for watching videos, hopping on video calls, or just for propping up your phone hands-free. This case is also fully compatible with MagSafe, so if you're someone who loves to use magnetic charging, then this case is perfect for you. And best of all, installation couldn't be easier. Just snap it on, and the precision cutouts align perfectly with your ports, buttons, and the Flip's unique hinge. There's no complicated steps, just instant protection and functionality. You also get very easy access to the various buttons and the fingerprint sensor. So with this case, you no longer have to worry about dropping your phone because your phone is now fully protected. So if you're looking for an excellent rugged case for your Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 7, then the ToneGate 360-degree spin magnetic stand case has you covered. And go to the link in the video description to learn more about this case. So this is the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 7. Now I can't believe that it's already been 2 months since I got this phone. Samsung did send me out to their Unpacked event in Brooklyn, New York, and that was when I had my first chance to actually use this device. And ever since then, I've got to say, this phone has been super fun to use, and it's definitely one of the more unique devices that I've ever covered here on the channel. Now, to make things even more interesting here in this video, this is actually the first flip foldable that I've ever used. So I've certainly learned a lot from that experience, and this phone has a lot going for it, and also a few things that I think definitely need to be improved for the next generation. Now, before we get too far into things here with the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 7, let's see what all comes included in the box. So here is the box. You can see an outline of the phone right there. Now, it is a slim box, and that's because there is no USB wall adapter included, and when the phone is sent out to you, it is sent in the open position rather than being folded shut. But we'll open the box right now, and there's really not a whole lot in here. And inside of there is a SIM card removal tool. We're also getting a double-sided USB-C cable for charging and data transfer, and then we are getting a quick start guide. So this is the blue shadow color of the Galaxy Z Flip 7, and I really like this color. In fact, I like all the colors that are being offered this year for this phone, but this one certainly is my favorite. Now, I do recommend that after this video is over, that you take a look and see all the various options that Samsung does have for colors of this device, but this one does look especially cool. Now, when I first got this phone, I was especially excited about it because this is actually the first flip foldable that I've ever tested here in the channel, and the first one that I've ever actually had in my possession. So I'm really excited about this. And as a content creator, this form factor is especially helpful because you can use this whole outer cover display as a viewfinder while still being able to use the main cameras here. And I feel like that's especially useful because one of the downsides of using the main cameras on a smartphone, at least as a creator, you can't see what's being recorded if you're using the phone for A-roll. So if I'm recording myself, for example, talking to the camera, I can't see what's in the frame. That's an obstacle that everyone faces when they're taking photos or videos with their smartphone, and certainly this form factor does address that issue. So I never actually had a chance to try out the Galaxy Z Flip 6, but from what I saw, this is a major upgrade. That phone had a very small front display. In fact, it was really only half the size of this front display, and I couldn't even really imagine using that device with that limitation because this whole display size that we're getting here comes in handy. I mean, literally every part of this display is being used when I'm using the phone. So having a display that's half this size or even smaller is certainly a big downside. We do have the 2 cameras here taking up part of the display, but that does make a lot of sense, especially considering the purpose of this outer display. And in addition to that, there's a lot more you can do with this outer display. You can add widgets, you can even add various applications using Good Lock. Now, I will be creating a dedicated tips and tricks video about this phone in the future, and this is a whole separate thing that I will be showing you in that video. But it is cool that you can add your various apps and essentially run a whole smartphone interface from this outer display. Now, unlike the Galaxy Z Fold 7, it's not quite the same experience with this outer display, at least in the sense of what you can do with it, but still, for this form factor, considering what we have here, it is still very flexible and you can pretty much almost do everything. And then of course, when you flip the phone open, that's where you get the full experience. So this display here is 6.9 inches, so it's a very large display. It actually features a 21:9 aspect ratio, and it is considered a foldable dynamic LTPO AMOLED 2X display, We're getting a 120 Hz refresh rate here with the display. This display is 1080 by 2520. We're getting a PPI of 397, and we are getting an 88.7% screen to body ratio. So very small bezels all throughout. And then up top here, there is a front-facing camera. So I do like the flexibility of having this 10 megapixel front-facing camera because you don't always want to be using these cameras here, especially if you're doing something like doing video calls, for example, when you have the phone fully open. Now this outer display is certainly not a bad display by any means. In fact, it's really good. So this display is Super AMOLED, and it is a 4.1-inch display. It does feature a 120 Hz refresh rate, so a super fast refresh rate. It does have a resolution of 948 by 1048. We're getting a PPI here of 422, so actually better PPI than the inner display. And this does feature Corning Gorilla Glass Victus 2, making it extra durable. And that durability is definitely important, considering that this display is on the outside of the phone at all times. So doing something like taking a selfie is literally as simple as swiping right on the camera icon, and then from there, you immediately have this interface where you can begin capturing images. So simply just tap, and then it'll take the image. You can swipe over to do portrait mode. You can swipe over the other way to do video. And this phone does support 4K 60 video, so that's really awesome. So when you're capturing images in this mode, you have a lot of different abilities. So I can switch over to a different aspect ratio if I want to. I can do square as well. I can tap here on 1x and switch over to the ultra wide camera. And as you can see there, you're getting some super wide selfies, which is really cool. So the main camera on here is 50 megapixels and the ultra wide camera is 12 megapixels. And then when the phone is flipped open, then you can do the same thing. So you can take selfies with that selfie camera up there on the inside, and you can also use the main cameras on the device, just like any smartphone. So in many ways, when this phone is flipped open, you actually forget that it's a flip phone, and it really just feels like a very tall, standard candy bar form factor phone. Now in this mode, there are certainly a lot more options. You can go to the More tab, and you can access many other things here, such as Pro mode. You can do dual record. So pretty much all the features you'd expect to find with a Samsung smartphone. Now with this device, we're getting 256 gigabytes of storage, but there's no micro SD card expansion, so keep that in mind. But that is pretty much typical and expected for a phone in this segment. Now with this device, there is wireless charging, which is really cool, and it does feature 15-watt wireless charging. So I wasn't totally sure if it would have wireless charging, but it does. And there's even cases out there with MagSafe, and you can put this phone on a MagSafe charger, and it's kind of a cool and different experience just because you're getting basically a phone the size of a MagSafe circle being on the MagSafe. And then with this device, the fingerprint sensor is located on the power button, and that does work really well. Now, realistically, with this form factor, they really couldn't have put the fingerprint sensor anywhere else other than on the power button. It's not like you have it built into the display right here, especially with this kind of foldable display technology. And then it doesn't make sense to have an in-display fingerprint sensor on the outer display either. So this is pretty much where they had to put it. Now this does lead me though to a major downside of this device, or at least something that I wish was a little bit different. I often find myself having trouble distinguishing between this button and then the volume button. I almost wish the volume button was on the other side of the phone, just because of how close these buttons are and how they're pretty much the same size. So I know for the volume button it is raised, whereas the fingerprint sensor and power button is not raised. It's pretty much flush with the device, but I do find myself constantly pressing the wrong button here. Now, certainly if you use a case with this phone, that does help a lot with that issue. And on that note, I'm not even sure if putting the volume button on the other side would make things better. I mean, obviously you know that on one side it's for power and the fingerprint sensor, and the other side is for the volume button, but that could make the phone a little bit more awkward to use. So I'm not really sure what the solution is. Let me know in the comments if you think this is even a genuine problem or something that should be addressed in the next generation, and what you do if you were in charge. Now, unlike the Galaxy Z Fold 7, this phone does not have a Snapdragon processor. Instead, we're getting the Samsung Exynos 2500, and that's actually pretty good as far as performance goes. I haven't really had a problem. This phone does get a little bit hotter, I'd say, than a Snapdragon device would, but overall, I don't think they made a bad choice with that, and this phone does come with 12 gigabytes of RAM. Now, I did run a benchmark test using Geekbench 6, and here are the scores I got from that test. So I got a single core score of 1919 and a multi-core score of 7384. Now, these scores are a bit lower compared to the Galaxy Z Fold 7, and I will be doing a dedicated comparison between this phone and that phone in a separate video, so definitely stay tuned for that content. But it's not like the scores are really far apart, but this phone certainly is not as fast in comparison. But really the biggest downside with having Exynos with this device has to be the photo and video quality. Now you'll see in a second for yourself, but I will say I'm actually a little bit disappointed with the quality of the cameras on this device, or at least the results that you're getting from it. I did notice that a lot of images do tend to be pretty washed out, and that's especially disappointing because as a creator, I was really looking forward to using this device to create content, and certainly in certain situations, this phone is still a good option, and it still takes good quality photos and videos. It's just that it's not nearly as good as the Z Fold 7 or even the Galaxy S25 Ultra. So having that compromise in image quality does make me not really want to use this phone for creating content. And I even saw some people who had the Galaxy Z Flip 6 from last year. They did a photo test in comparison to this device, and they found that photos actually looked a bit better with the predecessor device compared to this one. So I certainly never like to see a phone take a step back from a previous generation, so I'm not really sure why that is. Maybe this can be addressed in future software updates, but so far that hasn't really been the case. I think the reality is that Exynos chip just doesn't do as good of a job when it comes to image processing. So again, I wouldn't call that a deal breaker, but on the other hand, I really love the hardware of this device, and I just wish that the photo and video quality was a bit better. And I get that they have to meet a certain price point, but I wish they offered an ultra version of this phone just to give those ultra users what they're really looking for. Because I know for many people this phone might seem like more of a toy or more of a fun device to use, but for content creators, I mean, having this form factor is super useful, and certainly for someone like myself, I was especially excited for this. But let's now take a look at some image samples from the Galaxy Z Flip 7, and I'll let you be the judge for yourself. So like I mentioned, it's not that the quality is bad from the cameras on this device, it's just that it's not at the level of the Galaxy S25 Ultra or even the Galaxy Z Fold 7, and I feel like this phone should be at least on par with those because as a content creator, and especially when I'm buying the latest devices from Samsung, or at least using the latest devices from Samsung, I want the best video quality possible and best photo quality possible. And I feel like this device does give us quite a bit of compromise in that department. So this is just such a powerful form factor of a phone, and it is just too bad that the quality doesn't always live up to, or at least live up to the expectations that I had prior to getting this phone. But again, it's not like it's trash quality, it's just that it could be a bit better. And I know it could be a bit better from using Samsung's other premium products. And it's not just the level of detail from the images, but it's also the colors. So again, with colors being off, that is just something that I can't really look past. But if from you looking at these samples you don't see much to be concerned about, then I suppose that's not a deal breaker for yourself. But again, it just leaves me with a bit to be desired. But I just personally don't want those compromises because I record most of my videos with a smartphone, and I want some of the best quality possible, especially if I'm using an expensive device. But let's now take a look at some video samples from the Galaxy Z Flip 7. What's going on, everyone? This is Kevin here, coming at you with a 4K front-facing test video from the Galaxy Z Flip 7. Now this is using the inside front-facing camera, so this is not on the outer display, which would be the main camera. So this is when the phone is folded open and I'm looking at the phone on the larger display. So just wanted to point that out. Also, if you hear kind of a buzzing sound in the background, that is my air conditioner. That is nothing related to the phone itself, so I just want to point that out there. And here's a 4K test video using the main rear camera on the Galaxy Z Flip 7. So I am now looking at the outer cover display here and then using the main camera to take this video. So as you can see, I'm sure it's a bit of an upgrade compared to using the front-facing camera on the inside of the phone, which would make a lot of sense because this is the main camera. And that's definitely a major selling point of this device. Now I'm going to switch to the ultra-wide camera. So here's the ultra-wide with the device. So it's definitely nice having this viewfinder, being able to look and see myself, and I'm able to perfectly frame my video here. So it's definitely a great feature. And now we're using the main rear camera on the Galaxy Z Flip 7. We have very fast autofocus in video mode. Now I just switched over to the ultra-wide camera. So of course with that, I can fit a lot more content into a single frame here. And then now back to the main camera. Now with the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 7, we're getting a 4300 mAh internal battery, along with 25 watt fast charging. Now overall, 25 watts isn't that fast in 2025. It's certainly not slow charging by any means, but it's not as fast as the Galaxy S25 Ultra, for example, so I do wish that was a bit faster. But it is at least fast enough to recharge the battery that we're getting here pretty rapidly. And then this phone does come with Android 16, along with One UI 8 out of the box, and that's definitely a great experience. I'm a big fan of One UI. I feel like it's one of the best takes on Android, and One UI 7 was a big jump from what we've gotten previously, and One UI 8 makes things even better here, so I'm a big fan of the software, that's for sure. Now with this device, we're getting IP68 dust and water resistance, which means this phone can go underwater for up to 1.5 meters for up to 30 minutes, and it is dust resistant. So you don't have to totally worry if you're in a dusty environment of dust getting in the hinges, for example. Obviously don't shove this phone in some sand, but at the same time, you don't have to be really worried. I mean, you should definitely buy this phone to use it as a phone. You don't need to be babying it all the time or being worried, and this phone is designed to be opened and closed many different times. Now, similar to the Galaxy Z Fold 7, this phone is, in some situations, kind of difficult to open. And I think that's really just done on purpose here because they didn't want the phone to accidentally open up or any issues like that to come up. But you do have to kind of get a grip on here. So fortunately, by using a case with this device, that is a bit easier, but just know that there's not much of an area to grip in between the two parts of the phone. But I love this aluminum frame on the device. It looks fantastic. Honestly, the crease doesn't bother me. I know some people wish that the crease was a little bit less obvious, but thankfully this display is very bright and vibrant. So when you're looking at content straight on, or even just the phone straight on, you really do forget that the crease is there. So it's not annoying at all. It doesn't really get in the way when you're going around the phone, navigating around the phone. It's not like your finger gets stuck when you're moving it across the device. It's really no issue at all. So I really love this form factor. I love the size of the phone, and I love this outer display, and especially this generation where it's pretty much taking up all the space here. But this concludes my video on the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 7. I definitely think it's a good option, but I do feel like the cameras can be improved in the next generation. It would also be nice if the next generation switched back to Snapdragon, because I just feel like putting Exynos in this phone just isn't really working out that well. But again, it's a beautiful phone with a lot of improvements from last year. I'm really liking it a lot, and I'm looking forward to giving you even more coverage into the future about the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 7. But if you like the video, definitely give it a thumbs up. This is Kevin here, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care and have a great rest of your day.